Hey guys, if you enjoy content like this, I stream every Monday through Thursday at twitch.tv/bikespokes from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. So come check me out. All right, enjoy the video. Hey, what's going on YouTube? Today I want to talk about my starter for next league, but also my starter for this week's event, the Blast from the Past event. Basically, it is Toxic Rain. It is very straightforward skill build. There's not much to it except for the fact that it's just built around having a really good solo campaign capability. And if you haven't used the skill Toxic Rain before, basically what it is you fire arrows into the sky, they come down, they land on your enemies, and then they explode and cast a bunch of vines that deal chaos damage over time. This build projects about 2 million DPS by the time it hits maps off of very minimal gear, with the really only thing that you actually need in the build is Quill Rain. Like, apart from that, it can deal with tier 16 maps as long as you're res capped, you have the levels, and you have a Quill Rain. The rest of the build just kind of functions by itself. Of course, you also should probably try to have a 5 link by the time you get to tier 16 maps. That's about how the build works. Besides that, it's mainly built for mapping, and the build has a bit of a ceiling to it, so it struggles to get to a point where you can really push the damage much further once you get to that mapping stage. That's why they call it a starter and not a finisher. Now, this build that I'm following was created by a good friend of mine and streamer Cerberus100. You can check him out at Cerberus100, twitch.tv/Cerberus100. Ever since I discovered his Toxic Rain build, it's been my go-to for all league starters. I used to be running Arc Witch, but now I run Toxic Rain because it is very much a build that is self-sufficient and can get you to that stage of being able to do some mapping and can start building up some currency so that you can transition to a better, stronger build if you need to. It's also great for 1 week events because it's got a very efficient leveling path. It's very easy to level with and can get you to maps very quickly. This map has very underrated defensive capabilities for it being a ranger build, and is able to abuse a lot of the skills that are not so typically able to be used by other classes. For instance, we get access to Blood Rage, Sniper's Mark, Precision very early on in our build, so we're able to push progression very quickly. Going over the build, apart from a Quill Rain, your second best item that you would want to try and get a hold of is Thief's Torment, because Thief's Torment gives you a lot of sustain with gaining 60 life per enemy hit and 30 mana per enemy hit. It is basically a offensive defensive ring. It has a ton of defensive value, and then it even adds a little bit of quantity to your build. Now, the downside to Thief's Torment is you can't run a second ring, but it's not that big of a deal when it grants you 33% all res as well as all this other defensive adjacent stuff. The only other uniques you're really going to want to be looking for this build is Cherubim's Maleficence, which is just a good chaos damage chess piece that is very common, easy to find and or pick up, very cheap. They're everywhere, and it just gives you a good amount of chaos damage at base life, and then gives you extra recovery for life leech. And then you also want to try and get your hands on a Rumi's Concoction for that chance to block. It's good defensive tech and also grants you extra armor as it is a granite flask. The rest of the build just functions around certain rares, giving you either damage over time multiplier or it's granting you resistances. And then you're also just going to want to try and stack your attack speed the best you can. On the helmet and gloves, you're going to want to try and get the chaos damage over time multiplier implicit for Eater of Worlds. You want Withered Inflict expires 10 to 12% slower so that you can stack Wither on enemies. And then for the helmet, you're also going to want the Searing Exarch, Eater of Worlds, reduced mana cost of attacks and mana reservation efficiency. That's going to let you run your end game skills. So for skills, the main skills you want to be running in this build are Grace and Malevolence as your auras, and then you're going to want to run a Immortal Call, cast when damage taken, and increased duration guard skill setup, so that if you do take a lethal blow, Immortal Call will try and keep you alive in that scenario. For your utility skills, you're really just going to want to get your hands on Mana Forged Arrows with Frenzy to grant you Frenzy charges, and then you're going to want to level up a Flame Dash as your movement skill, as it is one of the best movement skills by itself for most builds. And then, of course, for curses, you're going to want to get Despair so that you can handle cursing enemies, particularly bosses, because it is added chaos damage penetration. For the 6th link, ideally you want to end up with Toxic Rain, Mirage Archer, Void Manipulation, Vicious Projectiles, Efficacy, and Concentrated Effect. If you're running a 5 link, then you want to drop Concentrated Effect and run the rest. And then, of course, if you're running a 4 link, you want to drop Efficacy and Concentrated Effect and just run the Vicious Projectiles, Void Manipulation, Mirage Archer, and Toxic Rain. Since we're a bow build, we're able to use Mirage Archer, and Mirage Archer is a super powerful skill for leveling, as it allows you to kind of have that quality of life of not needing to stop to attack all the time, and that way you can kind of just get passive levels and passive drops without having to worry about stopping and attacking as often. The build, by the time it reaches around level 90, has 2 million combined DPS over damage over time, pretty much. It's about 1.5 mil your damage, and then 400,000 the Mirage Archer's damage. You'll also have about 4,500 life, which should be plenty of life for mapping. And your max hit is about 34k. Of course, Fizz max hit and Chaos max hit is really hard to get on a budget League start character. But this build's elemental max hit is fantastic once you obviously get your elemental resistances capped. And you have a ton of extra regen from your passive tree. You end up with about 283 life per second regen. And then you have a 2,000 damage life leech. So you have a lot of life gain and sustain. Paired with a guard skill, the build is really tanky and can usually get you all the way into red maps very early on. The build also has about a 90% of A chance once you get to a point where all your auras are up and you have got your base gear put together. Now, the cool thing about this build is, since it relies on so little uniques and so little specificity, that you can kind of just go with whatever you pick up off the ground and, you know, a few bench crafts here and there, and you're pretty much good to go. You'll have your max res kind of put together because you are not constrained to too many uniques, and the uniques that are in the build are extremely impactful. Now, also, all of the uniques that this build has are 1 to 10 chaos uniques. They are extremely cheap to buy. The whole build can be made on about a handful of chaos orbs, and for that reason, it's extremely good for a build that you could run to, say, get into your hideout and start doing the market, or being a hideout warrior. It's very good at farming chaos recipes early on and getting you to that kind of stage where you can start pushing for value in the market. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of share with you guys what I'm going to be doing for League Start on next league and for this event. Hopefully you guys are enjoying the event so far, as we are about a day in now, and I will catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye.